Hello, dear listeners, and this is another cool episode of Film Filter. Believe this is episode 6. I'm your host. I have yet to change my name. I am still Edgar Chaput. Bit of a last-minute switch-up here for this week's episode. There is a topic I want to talk about, but I feel the need to do just a tiny little bit more research, just a little bit more reading, a little bit more fact-checking, and a little bit more of some number comparisons. Because I think it's a worthwhile topic. It is about a recent occurrence, a very, very recent film. Even if I record the episode for next week, it will still feel fresh. That being said, I do like to try to make this a weekly podcast. So far, so good. Six weeks into it, where we're doing okay. But as such, I was a bit at a loss for content because I didn't feel quite ready to talk about what I really wanted to, and that'll get pushed a week. So I figured, keep it simple. People like rankings, even though I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of them, and I feel like we could all wake up every single day and we wouldn't necessarily come up with the same list. So let's do a ranking about one of my favorite movie franchises, Alien. Yes, the Alien franchise is near and dear to my heart. It has been for many, many years. The first few films, I saw them a long time ago. I'm a child of the early 1980s, and my parents were open-minded enough to let me watch a little bit of everything. So even by the early 1990s, so I guess more or less barely 10 years old, I was already watching these movies. And since Alien Romulus came out this past summer, at the time of this recording, it's actually still in theaters, even though it's obviously not making nearly as much money as it did back in August. And they did announce officially the Blu-ray and the 4K Blu-ray specs. I think it has a December release date, so presumably it'll be on streaming. Not streaming, excuse me, on digital, buy, rent for the full price, probably in a few weeks, sometime in October, I'm guessing. This recording is happening on the very last weekend of September. So, Alien, there's a new Alien movie in the zeitgeist these days that has, at least financially and critically, done relatively well. So I figured, look, since I'm bouncing one of my topics that requires a bit more research off a week, how about I just talk about my favorite franchise? Alien means a lot to me. It's one of those films I saw at a very young age. The films, because I saw the first 3 in fairly rapid succession, actually, when I was a wee lad. And, some films leave a mark on you. They leave an impression on you. It's easier when you're a child, when one is a child, because we are, as children, impressionable. So it would make sense that something as visceral, as visually intense, tonally intense, thematically intense, would leave such an impression on me. But I will give the franchise this much. It is definitely a collection of films, particularly the early ones, that have played a large role, not the only one, but a large role in my propensity, my proclivity to enjoy horror movies and to not be too squeamish about horror movies. I don't mind at all a good old-fashioned horror movie that gets a little bit gooey from time to time. And the Alien movies have a lot to do about that. I certainly don't need to, waste anybody's time about, how brilliantly the first one was constructed and how, what a good job Ridley Scott did. And isn't H.R. Giger just so important to the franchise? Everybody, Dan O'Bannon, everybody knows this. Just any self-respecting Alien fan knows the drill. So I'm not going to go into history. I am simply going to rank them, so consider these, I guess, mini reviews, since I love the Alien franchise so much, and since I am trying to get this movie podcast off the ground, and since I need content, how about I just give the listeners 2 to 3 minute reviews of each of these movies? Anybody who ranks these films, or maybe not anybody, let's say 99.9% of people who rank these films will either have Alien in first and Aliens in second, or vice versa. They'll prefer Aliens to Alien, but Alien will be no further behind than in second place. So let's just get let's get the meat and potatoes out of the way, after which I will go in descending order, because really that's what most people want to know. Right? Do you like Alien or Aliens more? I will go with the original, the Ridley Scott 1979 film. I do have a propensity to, how would I put this, gravitate toward the original films in a whole lot of series. I like Alien the most. I like The Bourne Identity the most. I don't know if I like Star Wars more than The Empire Strikes Back, but I do really, really like Star Wars a lot. There's something about the sense of discovery, which the characters themselves, Ellen Ripley and Ash knows what's going on. That's the big plot twist. But Dowse and Parker, they all go on this journey, horrifying journey of self-discovery. And when you don't know what's coming up, which is obviously very difficult these days in 2024, because most people have seen the movie, or they've heard of the movie, or they know the plot twists. And when I say plot twist, I'm including the chestburster scene in that. They've seen designs of the alien. They haven't seen Alien, but they've seen, I don't know, Alien versus Predator or something like that. So there's not a whole lot to hide. But if you are lucky enough to have never seen the film and just sort of vaguely know about it, or have a very cursory knowledge of it, it is an exquisitely produced film. It's one of my favorite films. Forget the fact that I'm a big Ridley Scott fan. Forget the fact that I like this franchise. Forget the fact that I have a proclivity towards horror cinema. It is one of my favorite movies, period. I have a great fondness for its aesthetic, for its set design, its production values. Again, it's not a film that was hugely expensive to make, but it looks like it was made for $100 million. And obviously, when you don't know what's coming, it's just freaking weird. It's a movie about truckers in space. It's a movie about the downtrodden employees who are used as cannon fodder, or what's the other expression? Canaries in the coal mine, which is funny because a small portion of the group go into cavernous mines, it looks like, when they discover the derelict spaceship, which is how one of them gets infected. It is about infection. It is about giving birth and death, in a sense. So it's a very simple film, and I remember, this is a few years ago, when I used to write for a particular publication, and one of my duties, if you will, was to keep a particular column going, and this column would concentrate on particular film franchises, and I would sort of give semi-reviews and backstories and behind-the-scenes snippets. And I remember writing something to the effect of, I think I quoted Ash, as Ash is about to get torched, when he admires the xenomorph's purity. And I think that is what I admire most about Alien. It is the simplest of the movies. It is the purest of the movies. And I've always gravitated towards it. It's about company greed. It's about corporate controversies and shenanigans. It's great fun. And it's the movie that put one of the greatest actresses ever on the map, Sigourney Weaver. Our final girl is Sigourney, who today is, a living legend. Kind of like Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween. Nobody knew who that was. Jamie Lee's a living legend these days. So Alien is my number one, which de facto makes Aliens as my number two. The great James Cameron sequel, relatively early in his career, just like Ridley Scott. And, this has been said time and time again, but it is the great thesis about Aliens. It is, in many respects, the perfect sequel, the job of a sequel. In my opinion, I shouldn't say the job of a sequel, but in my opinion, the job of a sequel is to, in part, continue what was begun in the previous installment, but also to intelligently expand that universe. Don't literally do the same thing again, even though it really has to adhere to what came before. It's an extraordinarily difficult juggling act, and as so many people have said in books, in podcasts, and documentaries, it's an incredible, incredible sequel. And in fact, it's so good, you probably don't need to see Alien to you certainly don't need to see Alien to understand Aliens. It's better if you have seen it, but it stands enough, they give you with enough information for you to understand what the setup is. So that's a great strength of the movie as well. And, what is the tagline of Aliens? This time it's war. Heck yeah. I mean, Aliens is basically a horror action movie, really, when you think about it. The continuation of Ripley's story and this, as I believe, might have been Michael Biehn in one of the making of documentaries said that the family unit of Ellen Ripley, Michael Biehn's character, and Newt, who, they don't have many scenes together. In fact, they really don't. They have precious few scenes together. But there is that great shot of them as they're hugging out of stressful sigh of relief after the facehugger attack in the lab. And that's a great shot. That's a memorable moment in that movie that kind of emphasizes this idea of this adoptive family unit. More aliens, the warrior aliens. The design is a little bit different, but just as cool as in the first one. They almost have more of an exoskeletal look about them. And of course, the bitch, the queen, and the fight at the end. It's absolutely fantastic. It's the great debate of Alien versus Aliens. Well, will live on because, and I think it'll live on because there is no answer. This is all a matter of opinion at the end of the day. So, don't pay too much attention to the people who are extraordinarily steadfast in saying Aliens is better. No, you prefer Aliens, and that's okay. But don't waste your breath arguing why it is better. Film is an art form and it's subjective. I like the purity of Alien more. I like subjectivity. I like the purity of Alien more, the haunted house angle of Alien more. But Aliens, let's not beat around the bush. It's freaking awesome. So those are my 1 and 2, which means let's go in descending order. And I'm about to make a revelation here, and I'm going to preface said revelation by emphasizing the fact that, I'm recording this. I think I said this already on the last weekend of September, specifically because I had considered doing this episode, but I thought, you know what? Alien Romulus is a little bit too fresh in my mind. Let it simmer. Let me digest it. Let me think about it for an extra couple weeks. And then I'll do this ranking. Well, I have let an extra few weeks go by. And I am still going to put Alien Romulus at the bottom. Is it because it has absolutely zero redeeming qualities? No, of course it has some redeeming qualities. The director, Fede Alvarez, and his crew, you can... The money's on the screen. They did put in a lot of effort in trying to make Romulus feel and in many respects sound like the original movie, with a little bit of the sequel blended in there. From an aesthetic perspective, if we consider film as an art form from an aesthetic perspective, yes, Alien Romulus is a made movie. I can't dispute that. I can't force myself into a contrarian position. It's a well-made movie. But I do think it has a pretty pathetic script. I'm not the biggest callback fan. I'm not necessarily anti-callback. It's fine if there may be just one or two, or if it's peppered, but there was a lot too much, and I just didn't think the script was very good. And I find the instances where the script, and again, I don't want to extrapolate from the minds of the screenwriters and the filmmakers. They had their reasons for doing what they wanted to do, and Ridley Scott, who is the producer, he's not directing, but he produced it. He's on record for appreciating what they did. But in my humble opinion, I feel there are far too many instances where my gut was telling me, oh, this is where the script thinks it's doing something smart, but it's actually doing something really dumb. Bringing back a certain character from previous movies, in a manner of speaking, bringing back a certain character. The way the Andy character, played by David Johnson, who's a very good actor. Well, there you go. That's another good thing about this movie. David Johnson is quite good in this. But the writing that went into his character, and not so much the relationship he and the Kaylee Spaney character have together. That's fine. I don't have an issue with that. But it sort of flip-flops between a couple pivotal plot points. It flip-flops from one to the other, and then flops back to the first one later on in the film. I'm going to dance around spoilers because the film is still relatively recent, and I'm assuming some people are waiting for streaming or digital or Blu-ray. So yeah, it's been out for over a month, but I won't give away everything. But then it flip-flops back to the starting point with that character, because the character is being played by an android, and I thought that was a very odd decision, and the final act doesn't work for me at all. The final act embraces. I couldn't understand the reviews that praised the final act and thought it was bonkers and wild and terrific, when it ostensibly embraces something that for a long, long time had been heavily criticized about this franchise. But this movie's embracing it, and it's awesome. I don't like what's going on here. I don't understand where these reviews are coming from. I thought the last act was awful, just trash. So yeah, Alien Ramis is at the bottom. Not that it doesn't have any competition. Number 6, I'm going to put Alien Covenant. Actually, I'm a huge Ridley Scott fan, but Alien Covenant has taken some significant hits over the years. I remember when this movie came out in 2017, I was very excited for it because I enjoyed Prometheus, and I was hyped for this movie. And I remember walking out of the theater. I actually saw this movie 2 or 3 times in theaters. Romulus, I've only seen once, and I'm not going back. But I saw this one 2 or 3 times in theaters, and I enjoy. To see something 2 or 3 times, you presumably you have to like it. So I did like it, but it's really taken a massive hit over the years. If I like the purity and the mystery of the original film, I can't in good conscience support the obsessiveness with over-explaining everything and over-revealing critical franchise motifs in Alien Covenant, such as David, becoming obsessed with birthing life, and therefore he's sort of the granddaddy of the xenomorph. He came up with the egg, through experimentation on Elizabeth Shaw. He came up with the egg and the alien life form. Well, and the black goo, obviously, can't forget the black goo. And all those things combined, he's the granddaddy of the xenomorph. No, I can't really I can't really stand that. I also find this is the one that has maybe the most awkward surprise final act. You know, Alien has a surprise final act where the alien's not dead. Aliens has a surprise final act. The Queen is not dead. You know, I find the surprise final act of Covenant is like the laziest. Like it seems to announce it far too easily. I find when the movie's doing a very bad job of pretending that it's over when the ship escapes that planet. Like, it's clearly not over. Like, there's clearly about 25 minutes left in this movie. I thought that was really cheap. And Michael Fassbender's a great actor. He's doing a great job in this movie. And no, I'm not just referring to the part where he says, "You blow, I'll do the fingering," although that is pretty hilarious. It's just, it reveals too much. It's quite sloppy. It doesn't seem to know exactly what it wants. Ridley Scott seemed so proud of what they accomplished on Prometheus, then announced the sequel was coming, then pivoted because people hated the myth making, the myth building of Prometheus, but he promised a sequel to Prometheus. So there's a little bit of Prometheus and a little bit of a slightly mediocre typical Alien film. So in that respect, it doesn't seem to really know what it wants to be. So Alien Covenant is number 6. I'm putting Alien Resurrection at number 5. Now, I still don't care too much for this film. It's funny. There was a time when I would have put Alien Resurrection at the bottom, and quite emphatically so. Now, for it to be in 5th place, doesn't mean I love it. Still don't love it. Still have big problems with it. I don't think the tone works. I don't think the Jean-Pierre Jeunet kooky, crazy, offbeat humor is a good fit with Alien. I like Alien films when they try to take themselves a little bit more seriously. You know, Aliens has humor. No, game over, man. But those feel like apropos in the moment and character driven, whereas Alien Resurrection's humor is clearly Jean-Pierre Jeunet saying, "Well, I want to make this very funny." It's like, no, just stop it. But it is bold. It's bold with the whole cloning thing, and Ellen Ripley is back, but also not really, because it's a clone of Ellen Ripley, and then they discover the ruined version, the failed versions of her in that laboratory sequence. That's really creepy. A very young Winona Ryder's in this movie playing an interesting character as well. The action's pretty good. You know, that underwater sequence is pretty iconic in the franchise, and I like it too. It is fun it is kind of fun having a Ron Perlman character in an Alien film. You know, it looks pretty good. I have an HD projector at home, and I actually rewatched scenes of it, I guess more or less at the time Alien Romulus came out theatrically. And I was impressed at how good the film looks. So it looks really cool. I like the bold choices from a story perspective, from a story and thematic perspective. I like the bold choices it makes, even though ultimately, it doesn't really come together, and it's all in all a little bit too silly for me to put it any higher than 5th. But unlike Romulus, which just rehashes a bunch of stuff, and unlike Covenant, which chooses to explain a bunch of stuff, Resurrection sort of goes off on its own unbeaten path. Not always successfully. In fact, it's my opinion that when it's not successful, it's pretty bad. But at least it's bold. Which brings us to number 4, which is Prometheus. I've always been a Prometheus fan, despite the script inconsistencies, despite the character inconsistencies. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense that Weyland-Yutani would hire, supposedly the best of the best, and then everybody behaves like a bunch of idiots, like chickens with their heads cut off once they land on the planet. So that never really made a whole lot of sense to me, nor to a lot of other people. I'm clearly not the only person with that criticism. But I appreciate Prometheus's boldness. just as I praised Resurrection's boldness, I'm going to do much of the same with Prometheus, but even more so. That's why it's in fourth and Resurrection's in fifth, because I have an appreciation for Ridley Scott and his team of filmmakers deliberately, consciously choosing to send the Alien franchise off in another direction, a direction that is a lot about myth making, about trying to find out where we as humans, capital H, where we come from, where man, capital M, comes from, just trying to discover those secrets. And as the expression says, never meet your heroes. Well, I guess in the world of Prometheus, never meet your makers. And I like that idea. I like that sense of adventure, not necessarily to it goes beyond discovery. It's not like Indiana Jones going on an adventure to save the Ark of the Covenant, or any sort of mystical stone. It's scientists going on an intergalactical adventure to discover where humanity originated from. And I think that's a really, really cool idea. And I also genuinely don't have an issue with discovering that the things that made us, the engineers, as they're officially known as, and their substance, the black goop, I actually don't mind that we learned that, maybe they thought it was a good idea at the time, but on second thought, let's actually use this goop to kill humans, or humans and possibly other things. I don't mind that. I actually think that's a neat, well, I don't know if it's a twist. I mean, it was sold as a horror movie, so I guess you can see that part coming. But I don't mind that being a part of the story, which also adds another little bit of thematic texture to that movie. You can be an inventor. You can give birth to an idea, to a creation, to a movement, to an organic life form, to a product. And then upon further evaluation, you realize maybe you made a mistake. Of course, in this case, it's being played on a grand, intergalactic, existential scale. And I like that. I appreciate that Ridley Scott and this film they swing for the fences. Do they hit a home run? No. Again, the script isn't all that good when you really sit down and evaluate it. But I like that it swings for the fences. And it's probably one of the last times, I'm not saying the last time, I don't think that's true, but I think it's probably one of the last times that Ridley Scott made a movie this good looking. I genuinely think that Prometheus is an absolutely gorgeous piece of work. And as a visual storyteller, Scott that is, his films often ride or die on his visual aesthetics. Now, it's not just him. He has a special effects team. He has his, Arthur Max, who's the production designer on his movies. It takes an army to make these things, but, and Ridley Scott seems to make a movie almost every year. And he's made very, very attractive films since then. But in the past, as of this recording, Prometheus is 12 years old. In the past 12 years, I would put Prometheus as one of, if not his best looking movie. I think it's extraordinary. And the visual allure helps me go along with it. Which can only leave Alien 3 in third. I didn't even do that intentionally. In fact, that reality is just hitting me now, that Alien 3, or Alien Cubed, as some people comically refer it to. Alien Cubed is in 3. Having made the rounds of other people's lists for this franchise, Alien 3 is never in first, I promise you that, but Alien 3 is often much lower than third. And I understand why. Earlier in this episode, I praised the adoptive family unit that is created in Aliens, between Ripley, Newt, and apparently I'm a fan, but I can't remember Michael Biehn's character in that film. I don't know why. And yet quite literally, during the opening credits, that family unit is obliterated and only Ellen Ripley is left. Two beloved characters die off screen. They kind of go out like punks, as I like to say. It's sort of I like saying characters go out like punks. Not necessarily because they were punks, but because it's almost like the filmmakers treated them like punks. Like, oh, these people actually aren't that important, so we're just going to off them. Nobody will care. But yeah, no, Michael Biehn and Newt go out like punks in the opening credits for Alien 3. And that's a big disappointment. It's also quite a bleak film. It's a very bleak film. I mean, if you thought Alien and Aliens were bleak, you ain't seen nothing left. Check out Alien Cubed. But, you know, I think there are some suggestions of where David Fincher is heading, especially as a visual storyteller. I think he and his team, and obviously it's very well documented that this film's production was marred by significant issues. Production was stopped. Fincher didn't get along well with the studio at all. Yada, yada, yada. But I think from a visual standpoint, I think this film looks freaking awesome. I like the idea of the prison colony where these very, very bad people they have to face something even worse than them, a true killer, the pure killer, and come to reckon with their own mortality. Some of these people are, rapists and killers, and they have to come to terms with their own mentality because they're probably not making out of it alive. And I like that. And they do it with this one person, Ripley, sole survivor of the Nostromo, this one person who's actually decent. It goes to say that stupidly bad luck has has forced Ripley to crash land on Fiorina, the prison colony. But I guess because these prisoners have to come to terms with their own mortality, and they have this strange code in a sense. There's this brotherhood of these prisoners. These awful, awful people have sort of formed a brotherhood. It's a little bit opaque at times. Hence why I like most people, I don't think Alien 3 is perfect. Far from it. But I dig the oppressive mood. And I think the reason why is because there is this unexpected hopefulness in it. Hopefulness because Ripley has experience with the alien. Hopefulness because the doctor character is not that bad. I mean, he committed a mistake. That's why he's a prisoner. But he's maybe not that bad. Even the leader, so to speak, the leader of the prisoners, has a very strict code. He's a rough-edged man, but there's something very interesting in that performance that lends a bit of humanity to it. So it's a very dark, bleak, oppressive film, and yet there are these slithers of light in it. The action scenes are really great. I'm a huge fan. I think the chase in the tunnels is one of the best action sequences in the entire series. I really, really do. I think there are action sequences in many other films in this series that I think don't hold a candle to the tunnel chase. Really, really cool. Nice Lance Henriksen cameo actually 2 cameos in this movie. That's a lot of fun. Fantastic score. I've always liked the Elliot Goldenthal score for this movie. Very cathedral-like. Very cathedral-like. Again, it's sort of bad people, prison planet, mortality, religiosity. I think Alien 3 is pretty cool. Imperfect, but pretty cool. So there you have it. Just to recap, in number 7, Alien Romulus, number 6, Alien Covenant, number 5, Alien Resurrection, number 4, Prometheus, number 3, Alien Cubed, number 2, Aliens, and number 1, Alien, the original. So that was another episode of Film Filter. I hope you enjoyed it. Agree or disagree, this is all just food for thought at the end of the day. I've been your host, Edward Chaput. We'll catch you on the next episode. Take care.